Hey, Larken Rose here, and I thought it was high time I did a video about the questions to ask statists, anybody who advocates government of any variety, to demonstrate that they cannot be consistent even inside their own heads and believe in government. I know that sounds weird if you're not already familiar with this. These are the 5 questions I'm going to be including in my Government on Trial project, which is to be sent to 100, well, at this point we're probably going to send it to 200 political philosophy professors across the country. I'm going to put the link in the description to that project if you want to help support it. The more support we get, the more professors we can include. 5 very simple questions. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to comprehend these. However, no matter how many degrees or how many years of education you have, nobody can answer these simple questions without either contradicting themselves or giving up the belief in government. So here we go. Number 1, is there any means by which any number of individuals can delegate to someone else the moral right to do something which none of the individuals have the moral right to do themselves? And number 2 is related to that. Do those who wield political power, presidents, legislators, etc., have the moral right to do things which other people do not have the moral right to do? If so, from whom and how did they acquire such a right? Now, most people instinctively and obviously grasp that the answer is no, you can't give a right you don't have. But that logically means that those in government, like Congress, doesn't have the right to do anything that we don't have the right to do, because who had that right to give them? Nobody. And so this very simple question cannot be answered unless you acknowledge that government doesn't actually have any special authority, because we couldn't have given it to them. And yet all of political mythology rests on the assumption that that's possible, to give rights you don't have. Number 3, is there any process, such as constitutions, elections, or legislation, by which human beings can transform an immoral act into a moral act without changing the act itself? Again, a simple question, and most people instinctively say, no, you can't alter morality. You can't do some weird ritual and make bad into good. Well, if you can't, then there can't be such thing as political authority. Number 4, when lawmakers and law enforcers use coercion and force in the name of law and government, do they bear the same responsibility for their actions that anyone else would who did the same thing on his own? Nazis at Nuremberg, we were just following orders. Or any cop in the US, hey, I don't make the law, I just enforce it. Does that make it okay? Does legislation make it okay to do things which would be bad if anyone else did them? Simple questions, simple concepts. You won't hear them discussed in the mainstream media or in most of academia, which is why I'm doing the Government on Trial project. Last but not least, number 5, when there's a conflict between an individual's own moral conscience and the commands of a political authority, is the individual morally obligated to do what he personally views as wrong in order to obey the law? Again, it's a simple question, and most people would say, well, you can't be obligated to do the wrong thing, which is the obvious answer. However, if you can't be obligated to disobey your own conscience, there cannot be such thing as an external authority that you have an obligation to obey, that outranks your conscience. Feel free to try out these questions on anybody. It doesn't have to be a philosophy professor. Anybody can comprehend the concepts, and nobody who believes in government can consistently and coherently and rationally answer the questions. It's completely impossible. If anybody doubts that, I'm waiting to hear your answers. Go for it. Now, those familiar with what I do may recognize that basically this is just a question version of my disproofs of authority found in my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, which you can get from Amazon.com or from my own website. But I challenge anyone, whatever fancy degrees you do or don't have, to answer these simple questions and be consistent and rational and still hang on to your belief in government, because it simply cannot be done.